Morning students, today we'll move on to the lesson Jody's flawn, the second portion. So please take page number 91. Movements directly in front of him startle him so that he trembled backwards. So that now Jody is in front of the flawn, that is the young one of a deer. So it startled the flawn. The flawn lifted its face to his. It turned his head with a wide, wondering motion and shook him through the stare of its liquid eyes. It was quivering. Quivering means shivering. So this young one of the deer was shivering. It made no effort to rise or run. So it didn't make an effort to rise or run. Jody could not trust himself to move. So Jody did not move. He whispered. So he is telling in a low voice, it's me. The flawn lifted its nose, sended him. So it sended him. He reached out his one hand and laid on its soft neck. So Jody reached out his hand and touched its neck. The touch made him delirious. Delirious means what? Extremely excited. So this flawn became very excited. He moved forward on all fours. So in four, with hands and legs, in four he moved forward until he was close beside him, until he was near beside the flawn. He put his arm around its body. A light convulsion passed over it, but it did not stir. So when he put his arm around its body, it shivered and did not stir, means did not move. He stroked its sides as gently as the flawn were a china deer. China deer means something which is made of glass. And he might break it. Its skin was very soft. It was sleek and clean. Sleek means smooth and shiny, and had a sweet scent of grass. He rose slowly and lifted the flawn from the ground. So he just lifted the flawn from the ground. The legs humbly, limply, they were surprisingly long, and he had to hoist the flawn as high as possible under his arm. So he had to carry it high under his arm. He was afraid that it might kick and bleat at sight and smell of its mother. So Jody was afraid that it might kick and run away. He skirted the clearing and pushed his way into the thicket. Thicket means the ground. It was difficult to fight through with his burden. The flawn's leg caught in the bushes and he could not lift its own with the freedom. So this flawn's leg was very long and it caught against the bushes. So he has to carry the flawn at a high position. He tried to shield its face from pricking vines. So there were many vines. Vines means climbers. It had thorns in it. So he shielded its face with one hand. Its head bobbed with stride. His heart thumped with the marvel of his acceptance of him. Reached the trail and walked as fast as he could until he came to an intersection where the road to home. So from the jungle, he reached a road that led to his house. He stopped to rest and set the flawn down on his dangling leg. So what did he do when he reached there? He was very tired. So he kept the flawn on the ground to rest. It wavered on him. It looked at him and bleated. So this flawn was looking at him and making a small noise. He said, enchanted, I'll carry you after I get breath. So he was very tired. So he told flawn that I will carry you when I get my breath. He remembered his father saying that a flawn would follow if it had first been carried. So his father had told him that if we carry a flawn for some time, when we keep it down on the ground, it will follow us. He came back to it and strode it and walked away. So this flawn started to follow him when he kept on the ground. It took a few wobbling steps towards him and cried piteously. It was willing to follow him. It belonged to him. It was his own. He was light-headed with his joy. So this flawn, Jody was very much happy because this flawn was what? Following him. He wanted to fondle him. He wanted to fondle him. He wanted to carry it. He wanted to run with it. He wanted to play with the flawn. He did it, not alarm it. So he dared not to alarm it. So he was walking in front and the flawn was what? Following him, but he did not what? Squeeze it or play with it because he didn't want to alarm it. He picked it up and carried it in front of him over his two arms. So what did he do? He picked it up and carried it in front of his arms. It seemed to him that he walked without effort. So he was walking now. His arms began to ache and he was forced to stop again. So his hands began to pain. So he started to what? Rest for some time. When he walked on, the flawn followed him. So he kept the flawn on the ground and it started to follow him. He allowed it to walk a little distance, then picked it up again. So he allowed it to walk a distance and he again picked it up. The distance home was nothing. He could have walked all day and into the night carrying it and watching it follow. He was wet with sweat, but a light breeze blew from the June morning. So he was very tired and he was wet with sweat. Now a small breeze started to blow and cooling him. The sky was as clear as spring water in a blue china cup. He came to the clearing. It was fresh and green after the night's rain. So he came to the ground which was fresh and green because the day before it had rain. He fumbled with the latch and was finally obliged to set the flawn to manage it. Then he had an idea. So he kept the flawn on the ground and he had an idea. He thought that he will walk in front and go to the pa's room, that is Papa's room, and the flawn may what? Follow him. He could walk into the house and Penny's bedroom with the flawn walking behind him. But at the steps, the flawn blaked and refused to climb up. Blaked means unwilling. He was not unwilling. He was not willing to climb the steps. He picked it up and went to his father. Penny lay with closed eyes. So his father was lying there with closed eyes. Jody called, "Pa, look." Penny turned his head. Jody stood beside him. The flawn clutched hard against him. Flawn was carried hard against him. It seemed to Penny that the boy's eyes were as bright as flawn's. So when his father looked at Jody, his eyes was very clear because he was very happy to have the flawn. "I am glad you found it," the father is saying. "I am glad you found him." Jody stood beside him. The flawn clutched hard against him. Clutched means was carried very near against him. It seemed to Penny that the boy's eyes were bright as flawn's. He turned. "I am glad you found him." Jody then went to the kitchen. The flawn wobbled means followed against him. A pan of morning milk stood in the kitchen, safe. The cream had risen up. So on top of the milk there was cream. He skimmed the cream into the jug. So he removed the cream into the jug. He poured milk in a small gourd. Gourd means a vessel. He held it out to the flawn. It buttered it suddenly, smelled the milk. He saved it carelessly from spilling over the floor. So this the flawn was not just smelled the milk and it was not drinking the milk. It's a precariously from milk spilling over the floor. It could make nothing of the milk in the gourd. He dipped his fingers in the milk and thrust them into the flawn's soft pattern. So what Jody did is, he put his fingers in the milk and kept it in the mouth of the flawn. So this flawn started licking the fingers, sucked greedily, then he withdrew them. He bleated frantically and buttered him. He dipped his fingers again as the flawn suckled. So he again dipped the fingers in the milk and just stuck it in the flawn's mouth. He lowered them slowly into the milk. So he just lowered his fingers into the milk. The flawn blew and suckled and snorted. Now the flawn started to suck the milk from the vessel. It stamped its small hooves impatiently. As long as he held his fingers below the level of the milk, the flawn was content. It closed its eyes dreamingly. It was ecstasy to feel its tongue against his hand. So this flawn was licking the milk. its small tail flicked back and forth. So it was what? Moving its tail up and down. The last of the milk vanished in the swell of foam and gargling. So this last drop of the milk was also drank by this flawn. So this is a very good lesson by Marjorie Kinna Rowling. So the author is Marjorie Kinna Rowling. So hope you have understood the lesson. I will be putting notes in the WhatsApp. Please do write the notes in the workbook as well as study the notes. Meet you in the next class with a new lesson. Till then, goodbye. Take care.